This photograph was taken in Belfast in April of 1912. The ship is the Titanic. She is brand new. She has never carried a single passenger. And along the hull, just below the forward deck, there is a mark, a long dark streak burned into the steel. For most of a century, nobody noticed it. When someone finally did, it raised a question. The official inquiry never answered. What if the most famous disaster in history had already begun, before the ship ever left the dock? You already know how this ends. April 14th, 1912. A clear, freezing, moonless night in the North Atlantic. 11:40 p.m. The lookout rings the bell 3 times. Iceberg, dead ahead. The ship turns, but not fast enough. A wall of ice grinds down her side. 2 hours and 40 minutes later, the largest moving object ever built is gone, and more than 1,500 people are in the water. The cause, everyone agreed, was the iceberg. The official British inquiry said exactly that. The loss was due, in their word, solely to collision with ice at excessive speed. Case closed. But the iceberg only explains the last 2 hours. It doesn't explain why a brand new ship, the one they called unsinkable, came apart so completely and so fast. Because the iceberg was never the whole cause. The iceberg was the moment. The cause was a chain of things that were already true before she sailed. And the first link was on fire. 3 weeks before the collision deep in the ship, a fire began in a coal bunker. Not an open blaze, a slow, smothered burn, buried inside hundreds of tons of coal. On coal-fired ships, this happened. We know it happened on the Titanic because a leading fireman named Frederick Barrett, who survived, described it under oath in 1912. The crew fought it for days, digging the bunker out, finishing only the day before she met the ice. But the heat had already done its work. Barrett testified that the steel bulkhead between boiler rooms 5 and 6 had been warped by the fire, bent top to bottom. And here is the detail that keeps researchers up at night. By his account, that same weakened wall was among the bulkheads that gave way as the sea came in. For a century, that fire was a footnote. Then the photographs surfaced. A researcher named Sinan Moloney tracked down images taken by the shipyard's own engineers before the Titanic ever left Belfast. And there it was, that 30-foot streak on the outside of the hull, almost exactly where the iceberg would later tear her open. Engineers who examined it concluded it was most likely scorching from the coal bunker fire directly behind that steel. Moloney went further. He argued the fire may have burned near 1,000 degrees and weakened the steel by as much as 75%. But that figure is his interpretation. It has never been confirmed by testing the actual steel. And many historians push back, hard. Here's the truth that's less dramatic, but far better documented. The fire didn't have to do it alone. Start with the rivets, millions of them holding the hull together. Decades later, a metallurgist at the US government's standards lab pulled rivets from the wreck and tested them. The iron was full of slag. In freezing water, iron like that doesn't bend. It snaps. A forensic study followed. 48 rivets, the same flaw, traced to a shipyard that, building 3 giant liners at once, had ordered a cheaper grade of iron and stayed short of skilled riveters the whole time. So the hull was never sliced by one clean gash. The cold, brittle rivets popped, the seams between the steel plates sprang open, and the sea poured in faster than anyone had designed for. Then there was the speed. 22 knots, nearly flat out, into an ice field she'd been warned about. At least 6 warnings reached the ship by wireless that day. The 2 most urgent never reached the bridge. So, put it together. A ship running fast, through ice she'd been warned about. A hull held by iron that turned brittle in the cold. A bulkhead already weakened by a fire that had smouldered for weeks. And then, 11:40 p.m. The berg doesn't punch a single hole. It opens her along nearly 300 feet of hull, roughly 6 compartments, one after another, and the walls built to hold the water back don't. Now, how much did the fire actually matter? This is where serious historians disagree, and we won't pretend otherwise. Some, including the researchers behind the photographs, believe the fire was decisive. Others are blunt. A former honorary secretary of the British Titanic Society put it plainly: a fire may have sped things up. But in his view, the Titanic would have sunk anyway. The iceberg breached around 6 compartments, damage no single weakened wall could have saved her from. And here's the thing: both can be true. The fire was real. The brittle steel was real. The speed and the warnings no one heeded, real. No one of them alone sinks the ship. All of them together do. And that's what the Iceberg story leaves out. We remember the Titanic as a ship with terrible luck. One bad night, one piece of ice. But luck is not a cause. By the time she reached that ice, the Titanic was already built from small compromises. A cheaper grade of iron, a shipyard in a hurry, a fire left to burn, warnings no one heeded. The iceberg was just the last thing to go wrong, on a ship where far too much already had. The unseen cause is almost never the thing you're looking at. It's everything that made it possible. This is the unseen cause, a new one, every week.